Hi there, I'm Christine Conrad, and you're watching another episode of Innovative Tac-Tips, and I get to pick the brains of industry leaders from all walks of fields, no pun intended, on this episode. I get to interview today Keith Grabowski, because I'd be a horrible substitute teacher if I ever tried to say anyone's last name. Thank you for joining me, and I would love for you to tell people what you do. I know that you have a podcast that has over 50 million downloads. You're in the top 200 with your podcast, but I would love for you to tell the listeners and the viewers more about your podcast. And then from there, I have a bunch of questions to ask you because I'm a football fanatic myself. But again, I am on the sidelines cheering.
Yeah, well, the easy way for me to put it is I'm a coach, but I do so much more than that. Now I haven't actively coached since 2016 and stepped away from the game then, really to be able to spend my time, have some free time to watch my kids do their thing as they went through high school. And now, I got one out of college, the other one is a senior in college and playing baseball. But, that drove me to look at some other things I could do. I had been working in coach education, doing some writing for some different coach publications. And so I kind of knew that side of the business and had some opportunities. And the podcast was developed really to help me stay close to the game, was the idea, because I thought, I'll go back after they're done with high school. But this has evolved, and I really like what I've been able to do here. And we're continuing to grow it and grow the platform and grow some other companies that I work with. And still very involved with football and coaching. I still think of myself as a coach in the way that I work with other people. It's just on a different type of field now.
I will say I commend you because coaching is not for the weary. To know something and to be an expert in it, but to relay it in a way that's going to be digestible for the other person in the same magnitude is rocket science. Again, I wasn't a football coach, but I was a high school dance coach, and to choreograph something and then relay it and then have it be performed at the caliber that you want to win championships is it takes a village. And so I do appreciate that mentality. You do also advise tech companies. Is that correct? Like you do that on the side in addition to your popular podcast?
Yeah, the podcast is just part of what I do right now. I work with a company called CoachTube, and I'm the director of football there. So basically, CoachTube is a platform for coaches to sell their content. And the way the publishing world used to work for coaches is the coach would get, a 10% royalty on whatever content he produced. And I had done this before. Like I think I had 6 or 8 videos in a series that I did back around, 2011, 2012. And I was getting checks for a couple $100, and then I realized this isn't that good. And so I actually in my first kind of step out of football and into business was doing it part-time. I was publishing other coaches' books. I self-published some of my own on iBooks in a very dynamic format, multimedia format. And so I kind of had a passion for what can I do to help coaches make more off of their content? They should win, with all this IP they developed, but they really weren't. So, CoachTube solved that problem. And so we onboard coaches, organizations. I was mentioning to you before we got going, there's a charity clinic we do with college and NFL coaches every year that replaced an in-person camp that was being done during before the pandemic. So they had lost the revenue they were bringing in to this charity. It's called Lawrence First and Goal. And they fund pediatric brain tumor research and cancer services. And cancer services means that they give money to the families of these children who are at cancer treatment, so they can go and travel with them. And so they distribute grants directly. It's not, there's not any kind of administrative fee. It was started by the Luce family. John Luce is the associate head coach at Army, and Marianne, his wife, they started it in honor of their daughter, Lauren. And Lauren still will be at the clinics and saying hello to the coaches. And, she used to be out at the camps and speak at the camps. So she still stays involved with that. But we've been able to replace that income that they were getting from the camp, and now it's a virtual clinic. And then, there's a number of organizations we helped during the pandemic, and we're able to help coaches, supplement their income. Coaches, unless you're really getting to those highest levels, you're not necessarily making a lot of money.
No, it was the reward was more for like helping, students shape their character, right? It wasn't a monetary effort. So appreciate you for that. I coach part-time when I'm working a full-time job, and I felt like I was assistant coach, and that felt like a full-time job. So it's a lot of energy, time, and it's awesome that you can create a platform for coaches to share, because I think that's huge, right? I shouldn't say we, you guys, right, are so in the zone, and like you're in the game. And so sometimes you have like blinders on, where it's like there could be a quick change in maybe a route or a pass, and someone could have the answer. I think the Kansas City Chiefs head coach had said like he would ask the janitor for plays. I mean, obviously not to go down that extreme, but like that's, anyone could add value in that sense. And so to give a platform like that, and I know Huddle is for players, right? I think that's huge too for scouts. Again, could be, I haven't like dove into that technology, right? Because I'm obviously not a football player, and I'm not sharing that, but it's awesome to give coaches an opportunity, because there's a community with that too, right? From a national standpoint, I think that's super important to understand that. And I guess my question to you is, with all of that, what makes your heart sing about it?
About that part of my job, I think
just everything.
About anything.
Yeah.
About anything.
Yeah, about it. Yeah.
I love seeing people that I work with, that I care about, my family, my kids especially, succeed in what they're doing. I love being able to help other people, and I think a lot of times I have more satisfaction from them being successful than myself. I think it's just, the coach in me still, you want to see your players succeed on the field, and I've always made it, about them. So it kind of translates just to my whole life, and that's, that's what really brings me satisfaction, is when I can see other people succeed. So whether that's, a coach on CoachTube, making enough money that paid for Christmas, or, my son hitting a home run. So whatever it might be there, I think that's just helping others.
Well, they said Simon, I don't want to say verbatim, he said this, but Simon Sinek said, like, a true leader makes other leaders. Like, that's what they do. So I think and leadership is not just a title, right? It's a way of life. And so if it's a mentality and it makes your heart sing, I think that's like probably the biggest reward that I think anyone can get within, their career, or I guess in their personal and professional, because I think they bleed through back and forth. I do have an interesting question for you. So what $100 or less purchase has positively impacted your life in the last 6 months, or in a recent memory, that you can share on this podcast episode?
Boy, that's a tough one. I can't think of been spending so much money on my kids, especially my son with baseball. He's always spending my money on that. I'm gonna have to come back around to that one. I can't think of one off the top of my head there.
We can come back to that. What book or books you've given most as a gift, and why? And then what are 1 to 3 books that have greatly influenced your life?
I give my kids a lot of books, and I'm trying to think the one I've given them most recently. So my son listens to them, or no, my son reads them, my daughter listens to them. So I, do different forms for both of them.
They can be audibles. They can be they can also be podcasts.
Atomic Habits is one that we gave both of them recently. I really enjoyed that one. I think I've read that 3 times myself. I think, James Clear did a great job with that one. Another one, and I end up usually giving my books away, but I really liked a book by Mike Abrashoff called It's Your Ship. And I've bought it a couple times and given it away. I usually put it back on my shelf, but I go back to it often. He's been on the podcast. I first heard him read about him in an article, American Football Coaches Association, their summer manual that they put out. And he spoke, I think it was in 2004, and told the story of how, he turned this worst ship in the Navy, the USS Benfold around. But he did it through really just empowering all his people and helping them learn to do their jobs better and being able to promote them through the ranks. So it was a ship that everybody used to want to get off of, because it was so bad. Then it became one that people sought out, and that I think style of leadership really resonated with me, and that he turned his organization really into a learning community is how I saw it.
That's cool. Yeah, I appreciate people that are in the military because their mentality is, leaving people better off than they found them. Again, I don't know if that's obviously in like the motto, but that's how I perceive, right? Whenever I speak to veterans and people in the service is, it's a brotherhood, it's a brother and sisterhood. And I do appreciate when you have, like you have people in your charge and you want to take care of them and empower them. So I will write that on my list, either of Audible one or because I have an Audible membership. So I will put that on my list. How has failure, apparent failure, because I think failure is throwing the towel, is giving up, right? I think that's how I look at failure, has set you up later for success.
I think, I don't know, it's tough for me to relate to that word completely, like failure, because I've never felt like that I've failed in everything. I know that I've learned from things that I've done and moved on and, continue to grow from it. So I've never really viewed anything that's happened to me as a failure. I've seen it as opportunity to learn, opportunity to grow. But, I guess every now and then, maybe you feel like you have some setbacks, right? Like I always just not always planning ahead too. So for example, during the pandemic, USA Football, who I was working for, changed their focus to almost 100% flag football. And they're doing a great job with it now, but obviously that's not my thing. So our whole vertical was high school and college football, tackle football, 11-man football. And, I knew we were going to be going away. And that's how, I started kind of just looking at, okay, what could I do? And talking with Coach Tube, and had the opportunity, I think before I even talked to the CEO and HR director that day, I was already employed somewhere else. So it's, I think football coaches, you have to adjust quickly, right? There's not a lot of time to sit around, and you're kind of always planning ahead and looking at contingencies and what ifs. And so I've kind of always had that mentality. So, certainly I was really excited about what we were doing there as a team and some of the things we had developed. And it was sad to see that focus was going to change, for the, work we had put in the previous years, but it opened up new opportunities.
So with that, what advice, it's kind of like a two-parter, right? Because you include yourself in this. What advice would you give yourself before you started your, I guess, college career, football career? And then what advice would you give a smart driven college student about to enter the real world?
Before, saying like before college and then after college, is that what you're saying in that time frame?
Yeah, well, I make it. So I guess yeah. So I'm a mentor for Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I help like high school students prepare for college and what they want to, like basically what they want to do when they grow up. And I'm like, well, I'm not figuring it out, right? But I'm still like learning as I go, right? Like to your point, like there's pivots, there's decisions you need to make and adapt to. And I think I'd like to hear about what advice you would give yourself. It doesn't have to change the trajectory of, where you're at now, but like anything that you would reinforce to yourself. And then I guess, yeah, if you want to, what advice would you give someone who is going into college? So graduating high school, and then someone who's graduating college, who's going to get their first big kid job.
They were kind of both the same. I mean, obviously with one in college, one just graduated this past May. And, for both of them going into it, and really, I wish this was something I understood a little bit more, because I had a quick pivot out of college. I graduated with a business degree and went to work for a manufacturing company. And I did that for 3 years, but I was still coaching, started coaching when I was 19. And then I decided, this is the stuff I love. Why am I not doing this? So what I always I've told my kids, and I, kind of have taken this path myself, is go find and do something that you love, and the money will follow. Don't go chasing money because you'll be miserable. And even if you find it, it's not going to be what you want. So find a way to do something that you're passionate about. I'd always tell them, like, don't be thinking about getting a job. That's not what you want to do. Yes, you're going to have to be employed, but go into things to learn from it, to grow. Maybe that's not going to be the place you're very long. Maybe that's just a stop along the way. But what can you learn from it? So that's really what I've told my kids going into it. I told my daughter, as she was trying to make decisions on her first job, and a couple of options she had, and I've been excited in how they've approached it. And for me, like I said, I wish I kind of took that path early on. I think my thought, which I think a lot of kids going into college are like, well, what can I do to make a lot of money? And it's worked for me too, because like I said, I went from being a high school teacher and a coach, decent money there, but then taking a step back and being a full-time small college coach, that was a pay cut. But I found ways through, like I said, through my writing, through some content production, to make up the difference. And then it's led to bigger things from there. And, so I guess kind of to me, if you looked at my resume, it would look like, wow, this guy is all over the place. But truthfully, it's been an evolution for me of how I've approached my career and the things that I've done. And, like I said, in my mind, I'm still a coach, still working.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I looked at your LinkedIn, what I saw is like people who have those kind of like pivots and stuff are actually way more well-versed and way more skilled in whatever they want to do next. I think the more that you can be versatile, I know that there's a theory, right? There's be good at one thing and be known for it, or be like my dad, who owned a business in insurance and then started teaching college classes. He went to Ohio University and then Ohio State. So just want to throw that out there. Just put that out to you. Yeah, he had, again, I listen to my dad, but sometimes like it goes over my head because I'm busy, right? But yeah, he went to Ohio University and then Ohio State. But he would always say like, know a little bit about everything, right? Like know a little bit so you can have conversations with different people, learn and stuff like that. And I think with your podcast, right, you learn from coaches that are, I should say, elite coaches, right? So coaches that have been successful in their, I feel like coaching is an art and a science, like business, right? Like there's no one way to like win a championship. And so I guess in the last 5 years, what have you become like, from those, I guess, last 5 years, and then from, I guess, including the podcast, the interviews that you've done, what has something that you've like acquired? It could be a behavior, a habit, or something that they've said on the podcast that you've added to your life that has improved your life.
I think what this podcast has really enforced for me is the importance of continuing to learn. And I hear from a ton of these guests who are achieving at a high level, some who have done it for a really long time, that they're still learning the game, right? And I had a coach come on from at the first time he came on, he was at Greenwood High School in Arkansas, and I don't know, 9 state championships or something like that, a ridiculous amount of wins, like 400 wins. And now he's an assistant at Missouri, retired from high school, and then with the Tigers, helping them out. And his name is Rick Jones. And so early on, everybody's like, you got to meet Rick Jones, you got to have him on the podcast. So I did, and I was just blown away by the way he approaches learning the game. And Rick will tell me all the time, like, how he listens to the podcast and takes a ton of notes. And funny story shared that he would do it while he's walking, and he almost walked into the river taking notes on his phone.
It's kind of funny.
Rick also, I mean, just he won AFCA, like a Man of Impact award or something to that effect. Like I was consulting with a team in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they flew me out there. They wanted to learn my offense, and I'm about to get started with them in the morning, and Rick comes walking through the door, And I said, oh, Rick, I didn't know you were here to teach these guys too. He's like, no, I'm here to learn from you. And I was blown away. I'm like, you're here to learn from me. Like, you should be doing this. You're the one with 400 wins, not me, you know. But I hear that so often. Just like when you think you know it all, it's time to retire. You know that you got to keep learning, and I think that's true with whatever field you're in. Is just to always there's always something to learn. I think in today's world is just so dynamic. I mean, not just football, but
yeah, you can always learn something from someone, right? You know, like every person you can always learn from. Yeah. Just two, I think I have like three more questions. Just three more questions. If you had a billboard that reached billions of people across globally, what would you put on it? It could be a paragraph, it could be an emoji, it could be an acronym, it could be anything. What would you put on it?
I think just we need more of it in our world right now. It's almost like what was that? Boy, thinking of the Will Ferrell movie. He had the sign, "Everybody love everybody," but love each other. I think we're growing so divisive over things in today's world, and that's what I like about football. And what football coaches do and the way they approach things is, I mean, their little programs. If it's a high school, college, doesn't matter the level. I mean, it is a melting pot of all kinds of different types of people, right? From the body types that they have that play this game to, the backgrounds where people come from, and they bring them together. And why can't we do that with everything we're doing? It's just become so polarized and divisive. And, I think it fills people with a lot of anxiety and keeps them from, really being themselves anymore.
I saw a lineman catch a pass from a quarterback. Like, you can be anything you put your mind to. It was a high school lineman who caught I don't know if it was a Hail Mary because it wasn't near the end zone, but I was impressed. I was like, that man could jump. Like, his vertical was great. Anyways, like, you can do anything, right? Like, and also be kind, right? Like, I think to your point, people are multifaceted. So like, don't pigeonhole someone if just because they, went to this school. When I look at people's just school, what they've done, the more diverse it is, the more that I know that they know what's going on. Like, they can understand the assignment, like they'll do anyways, I don't want to say for everyone, but again, like, give people the benefit of the doubt. And yes, kindness. I think with COVID, right, there's like a blackout between 2020 and 2023. Like, we're all like, oh, it's 2024. Whoa, we're almost 2025. Wow. I think like stop staring at your phone and like have conversations. I think that's a huge thing when it comes to just getting to know people and learning about yourself, because you learn more about yourself by talking to people that are not alike at all. So kudos to you on that. I guess two last questions. Do you have anything in the works that you can share? Anything behind the scenes that you can share to people who are sitting at the edge of their seat, who already follow you on Twitter or LinkedIn?
I think the biggest thing I'm excited about in this next year, just with a podcast, is we've lined up. I have about 20 different hosts, coaches from all kinds of different areas, different points in their career, who will be hosting series on the podcast. My goal is really to only appear in 30 to 50 this next year. I think at its height, I was in about 260, but we started doing episodes here slowly over the last few years, and I really liked what we were getting out of our guests. I would listen to those and tell them like, geez, I'm going to fire myself. But I've always designed this, it's not named after me, never has been. I always had in mind that there would be other people involved in this. There would be more voices. And so, that's what 2025 is going to be about. We're expanding it, really excited. I already have some of those episodes that have been sent to me, listened to them, and been outstanding. So I think just that perspective, and that we can bring in more voices, come at this from different angles. I've always wanted this to be about the guests, and it still will be, but it's nice now to have some different hosts coming at it from different angles as well. And, I'm excited to listen to those and learn from them myself.
Well, I'm going to go back to the $100 or less purchase. We could say investment instead of purchase, because technically if it's value, right, it's an investment, value-packed investment. Is there anything, it could be like extending your show, buying a new I'm like, what is $100 or less? I'm trying to think about that.
Book a
Yeah, it's like you breathe, you walk outside and you spend $100. So I'm like, what?
man, $100 or less. Jeez.
How about like what
I
about,
don't even think of anything in there. I think for me, it's a lot. I probably spend, I don't spend a lot on myself, but I probably spend quite a bit on books. And I think, just that I've moved away. I mean, my bookshelves are full of like football coaching books, but being able to learn just different things, different people. I know, like you mentioned, Tim Ferriss. I have all of those. I think in the last year, started really reading more like on Stoic philosophy, and honestly started reading the Bible a lot more, like daily. And that's not something I had done. I went to Catholic school for 12 years, and thought I had my fill of that. But getting back into it, especially, I think the book is called "Richest Man in the World," and it's on Solomon and the Proverbs that have been good to go back to some of that as well.
I didn't go to Catholic school, but I went to a non-denominational school, and I write a 50-page thesis of my worldview and to study I studied world history and then other religions like Islam and Buddhism and stuff. And I will say I'm learning more to go back and study it because it is really very fascinating, and I commend you for that because it's not, those parables aren't, they're not sci-fi. They're not sci-fi at all. They're not like there's a lot to, it's very packed with a lot of stuff. So I guess last question, where can people find out more about you and your work? I would say Twitter or X, but again, I'm going to let you tell listeners where they can find you.
Yeah. As far as social media goes, X is the big one for me. It's at Coach K Grabowski, Grabowski, and the website is coachandcoordinator.com. I have an Instagram, and my daughter's actually going to be taking care of that one for me. So that'll just be more of our content rather than anything from me. But yeah, I write a lot, usually a couple blogs a week on the website, and then obviously post all the links to the podcast there. You can find the podcast on basically every platform. So we don't do the video version of it yet. You'll probably see a lot more of that in 2025, especially when you're doing 260. That's a lot of editing, and so audio is a lot easier.
You don't have to tell me. You don't have to tell me that. Yeah, it's, and especially different file formats. I understand that. So, well, thank you. I appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to listeners gaining practical insights, valuable insights that they can apply to their life today and be motivated to accomplish their goals, because that's a big thing, is to keep moving forward and keep pushing. So thank you again, Keith.
Yeah, thanks for having me.